Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Hasto Tarasati Srismat, His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Fantastic, thank you. We're reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita. This is the Adi-lila, chapter 8, text number 12. A little challenging Bengali, but we'll do our best. Hena kripa moya Caitanya na bhaje jai jana. Savotama ha-ilio tare asure ganana. Hena kripa moya Caitanya na bhaje ye jana. Savotama ha-ilio tare asure ganana. Hena, such, Kripamoya, merciful, Caitanya, Lord Sri Caitanya, Na, does not, Bhaje, worship, Ye, one, Jana, person, Savotama, supreme, Ha-ilio, in spite of his being, Tare, unto him, Asure, among the demons, Ganana, the calculation. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. One who does not show respect unto this merciful Lord, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or does not worship him, should be considered a demon, even if he is very exalted in human society. Please repeat. One who does not show respect unto this merciful Lord, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or does not worship him, should be considered a demon, even if he is very exalted in human society. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj says in this connection, O living entities, simply engage yourself in Krishna consciousness. This is the message of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya preached this cult, instructing the philosophy of Krishna consciousness in his 8 verses or Shikshastika. And he said, Iha hoite sava siddhi hoibe tomara. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one will get all perfection in life. Therefore, one who does not show him respect or cannot appreciate his mercy, despite all these merciful gestures, is still an Asura, an opponent of bona fide devotional service to Lord Vishnu, even though he is very exalted in human society. Asura refers to one who is against devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. It should be noted that unless one worships Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is useless to become a devotee of Krishna. And unless one worships Krishna, it is also useless to become a devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Such devotional service is to be understood to be a product of Kali Yuga. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks in this connection that atheist smartas, or worshippers of the 5 kinds of demigods, worship Lord Vishnu for a little satisfaction in material success, but have no respect for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, thinking him to be one of the ordinary living entities. They discriminate between Gaura Sundara and Sri Krishna. Such understanding is also demoniac and is against the conclusion of the Acharyas. Such a conclusion is a product of Kali Yuga. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Gurim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinatarnam. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master has very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. By the mercy of the spiritual master, even a blind man can see stars in the sky, a lame man can cross mountains, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. Namo Mahavadannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namnaya Gauda Twisi Namaha. Very famous verse of Srila Rupa Goswami. My dear Lord Chaitanya, you are the most munificent incarnation of Krishna, because you are freely distributing what no other incarnation of Krishna has ever given, and that's Krishna Prema, love for Krishna. So, Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are the identical, same Supreme Personality of Godhead. Though Rupa Goswami writes that Mahaprabhu is the most munificent incarnation, strictly speaking, that's true. But also, from the vision of Mahaprabhu's most confidential associates, he is in fact Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself. He is the avatari, or the source of all other incarnations. And he is supremely merciful. So, there is another strong statement. This is a strong statement by the author, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And some could interpret it as being a little controversial. Elsewhere in the Adi-lila, chapter 2, text 117, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also writes, a sincere student should not neglect the discussions of such conclusions, considering them controversial, for such discussions strengthen the mind. Thus one's mind becomes attached to Sri Krishna. So, our acharyas often do speak in very strong language. That's their mercy. We heard yesterday a nice story of one devoted mother who had a son who was always sick. And she was a good mother, very loving and caring mother, but for some reason her lad was always not well. So she took the boy to a doctor. Doctor thoroughly examined the boy, told the mother, "Come back in a few days and I'll give you the cure." So they returned in a few days, and the doctor, in a very strong manner, instructed the mother and the son, this boy must immediately stop eating sweets. I won't shout, but he was speaking in a very loud voice with maximum impact. So the mother and the child took the very serious and grave instruction to heart, and left the doctor's surgery. The boy got the message loud and clear, as did the mother. But as they were leaving, the mother couldn't help but ask, "My dear doctor, why you couldn't have told me that a few days ago?" And the doctor admitted, he said, "I was actually eating too many sweets a few days ago, and I had to give up sweets also to really have maximum impact when I gave you this instruction." So she understood. So there is what is known as acha and pracha. Acha means one's own personal conduct, and pracha means Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Bhaktivinoda Thakur all used the Old English word preaching. We can also use teaching, similar sounding word. So, and it's very delightful, some of us who are keen readers of Brihat Bhagavat Amrita, the wonderful translation and commentary of Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, know that our dear late departed Prabhu, he had a little framed saying on his desk where he would do all his translating and commentary service for the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, and that read something like, unless one's personal conduct is up to the proper standard, then one should not dare preach to the public, but one should stay in one's room and preach to one's own mind. So it could have been a quote from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati originally. So both things are very important, personal conduct, and of course we know that Srila Prabhupada quoted in many of his lectures and books the 6 occupational duties of Brahminical persons. And they were spoken originally by Swayambhuva Manu, who's the speaker of the Manu Samhita, also sometimes called the Manu Smriti, and which is considered the most important of the many Dharma Shastras. And there, Prabhupada would quote the great Muni, who said the principal occupations of Brahminical persons are Patan, Partana, Yajan, Yajana, Dana, Pratigraha, which means Brahmins should study Shastras very deeply and scrutinizingly. And what do they do with all that knowledge? Do they just become bookworms? No, they teach. They share that knowledge with others. And they can specialize in different branches of knowledge. And there are many branches, we know, of Vedic wisdom. Just like Dronacharya was a Brahmana, but he specialized in teaching the military science, the use of weapons. And amongst his many students were the Pandavas and also the Kauravas. So that is the business of Brahminical persons, and they like to do that. Just like Yudhisthira Maharaj, it's said he was more of a Brahmana than a Kshatriya, though he was very heroic and could fight very heroically and did so on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But his personal inclination was to sit with many learned Brahmanas and discuss the Shastras from different points of view. Arjuna and Bhimsen liked to fight. If there was an honourable fight going on somewhere, Bhimsen and Arjuna, they were there. But Yudhisthira Maharaj was not so much inclined to the fighting business. So Brahmins distribute knowledge, and they are also meant to perform sacrifices for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord and the Devatas. But automatically, by performing sacrifices for the Supreme Lord, the devatas are automatically satisfied. So they not only perform sacrifices themselves, and we know in this age of Kali, the recommended form of sacrifice or yajna is Harinam Sankirtan yajna. And we also teach people how to chant Hare Krishna. Once a month or so, in previous years, we would always include in the Sunday feast program a japa class where we would teach guests how to chant the Hare Krishna mantra on japa mala. And then we would offer them the deal of a lifetime. They could purchase one japa mala for just $5 at the end of the japa class. And Vasishrestha Prabhu to date has the record. One Sunday feast, 6 japa malas were sold. So we hope those people are still chanting on their japa malas. Only $5. Best $5 they've ever spent, we hope. So we teach, and of course devotees, you have to love a spiritual path which is primarily based on singing, dancing, playing musical instruments, feasting, and a little philosophy, or a lot of philosophy, if you're philosophically inclined. So that's 4. And of course, dana and pratigraha means Brahminical persons are allowed to accept charity. But they live very simply, and if they get too much charity, then they distribute that to others. They don't hoard. That's their own, again, personal preference, is to live very simply. Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, they like to live a little bit more extravagantly. They need a little bit more opulence. But Brahmins are very happy to live very, very simply. So Prabhupada has often quoted this, that these are the 6 occupational duties, and of course from there is a lot more detail. But and we see that the Krishna consciousness movement is we are doing our best to practice that on as whatever scale we are allowed by the authorities to do. So Mahaprabhu's position is very special, it's very unique. It's sometimes said that one of the reasons that Krishna chose to appear in this Kali Yuga, not in his opulent Vaikuntha form, but as a devotee of himself, was because the Lord knew that there would be so many bogus incarnations in this age of Kali. So Krishna came as Mahaprabhu to teach devotion to the Lord. As Prabhupada said, there is an incarnation of God loitering on every street corner in Bombay, quote unquote. And 5,000 years ago there was just one fake incarnation, and that was King Pundraka, who even wrote a very threatening letter to Krishna. He was staying with his friend, the king of Kashi Raj at the time, and he sent a message with a messenger to Dwarka that, Krishna, I am actually the real Vasudeva. You have to desist immediately from pretending to be Vasudeva. Otherwise I'll come there and severely chastise you. So this messenger read this message aloud in the court in Dwarka, and Krishna and Balaram and all the Dwarkavasis had a good laugh. So Krishna sent back a message with the messenger to King Pundraka, Krishna accepted the challenge and said he would come there, and of course there was a great battle, and King Pundraka, it didn't end well, shall we say, because Krishna did manifest his Sudarshan chakra, and yes, everything, his fascination or his fantasy of being the Supreme Lord went to King Pondraka's head, and ultimately he lost his head. But it all ended well for King Pondraka in the sense that he left this world, as did Sishupal, with the Supreme Lord right there. And he got what is known as Swarupya Mukti. He got, because he was always thinking of Krishna, pretending to be Krishna, he actually got the same form as the Supreme Lord in Vaikuntha. He got a four-armed form. So everything Krishna does is all good in Vaikuntha. So, but in this age of Kali, of course, we know there are many fake incarnations of the Supreme Lord. So, but Mahaprabhu did manifest his supreme divinity on a number of occasions throughout his pastimes. And one of the first was when a very saintly devotee came and stayed as a guest in the house of Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata. And that saintly devotee had two deities, a Shalagram Shila and also a small deity of Lord Gopal. And he was accustomed to cooking for himself and only eating what he cooked for himself. So Jagannath Mishra provided this guest with rice and vegetables and everything he needed to do his own cooking. But Nimai, who it appears was only maybe 4 or 5 years old at the time, after the devotee cooked and was making an offering to his deities, little Nimai came into the room, and while the devotee was deep in meditation, inviting the Lord to please come and enjoy the offerings he cooked, his eyes opened and he noticed there was Jagannath Mishra's son eating all the offerings. So this happened 3 times. Each time Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata were absolutely mortified, and they took their little Nimai away and put him in another room and guarded the door. Somehow or other, by the Lord's supreme mystic power, he was able to get into the room. And on the 3rd occasion, Nimai did, when the devotee complained, Nimai said, "Why, you're inviting me to come. You're offering all the invocation prayers and inviting me to come and eat, so I'm coming here and eating." And at that point, baby Lord Chaitanya, he showed his form to that saintly devotee as Krishna and warned him, "Please don't tell anybody about this." So that was the first indication of the Lord's actual identity as non-different from Lord Sri Krishna. And then there was another very, very famous pastime, which is known as the Mahaprakash Lila. And Prakash has a number of different meanings. One of them is manifestation or revelation. It can also mean light, shining, effulgence. So the Mahaprakash Lila of Mahaprabhu is very extraordinary. It went for 21 hours, and it happened in the house of Srivas Thakur, when Mahaprabhu invited all of his most confidential associates to please come, and on their request, and the Lord automatically agreed to sit on the throne of Lord Vishnu and be worshipped by his devotees as the Supreme Lord. And he manifested to each and every one of his confidential associates that form of Krishna with whom they were most familiar in worshipping. For example, Murari Gupta was a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra. So Lord Chaitanya manifested to Murari Gupta that form, beautiful form as Lord Ram. To other devotees, they were worshipping the Supreme Lord as Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan, the great Lord of Vaikuntha. So Lord Chaitanya manifested that form to them. And others were very devoted to Sri Krishna, so he manifested that form to them. It was a wonderful event in the life of Mahaprabhu. And there was a great bathing ceremony. Usually at such times, a deity of the Supreme Lord is bathed with at least 108 large vessels of Ganges water. On this occasion, even more Ganges water pots were brought. So, and that particular Mahaprakash Lila, it's described that that was conducted according to ancient ceremonies which are known as Raja Rajeshvara, which means the bathing of great kings. There was a rumor in Bengal that a great king would be born as a Brahman's son. That was a rumor which was very much known throughout Bengal, and everyone was expectantly looking forward to who is this personality. So that prediction, of course, came about with the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Another wonderful manifestation of the Lord's supreme divinity was when he manifest. Oh, can I go back? One important point regarding the first saintly devotee. When Mahaprabhu appeared to that first devotee who the Lord kept coming and eating his offerings, he manifested a delightful form with 8 arms. Four arms were the traditional form of the Supreme Lord in Vaikuntha, with lotus flower and conch shell for benedicting the devotees, and also the disc and the gada club. In another 2 arms, Krishna was playing the flute, and in the last 2 arms, Krishna as Gopal had a lump of butter in one hand and he was eating the butter with the other. So they were the eight arms. And the 6-armed form, very famously known as Sadbhuj, and actually there is a deity still worshipped to this day. Unfortunately, us white-skinned aspiring devotees aren't able to actually go into the Jagannath Temple, but that may change in the future. But there is a deity of Sadbhuj Mahaprabhu with 6 arms actually inside the Jagannath Puri Temple, off to one side, so it's said. So that happened, and that wonderful form of the Lord was revealed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who is a wonderful personality, the incarnation of Brihaspati, it's said by Kavi Kanapur. He's been identified in that way. And there's a delightful pastime when Mahaprabhu came. He was just on the outskirts of Jagannath Puri. And he went to visit one temple of Lord Shiva. And there was a river there. And Nityananda Prabhu, while Mahaprabhu was away, he took it upon himself to break Mahaprabhu's sannyas staff in 3 pieces and throw those 3 pieces of the Lord's sannyas rod into the river. And they floated downstream. So that river has since become famous as Danda Banga Nadi. Danda Banga means breaking the rod. So it's the place where Lord Nityananda took it upon himself to break Lord Chaitanya's sannyas staff. That place is not very far. It's only a few kilometres north of the Jagannath Puri Temple. It's known as Atara Nala, and there's an 18-arch bridge there which marks the entrance into Jagannath Puri Township. So When Mahaprabhu came back, he asked, "Where is my sannyas staff?" And Nityananda Prabhu, he said, "You were chanting my Lord ecstatically in Kirtan. You and I fell on the staff. It broke in 3 places, so it's gone away." Mahaprabhu wasn't very happy. Actually, Prabhupada does write about this in Adi-lila, chapter 5, text 142 and 143. And he writes there, Srila Prabhupada in his purport, that Nityananda Prabhu thought this carrying of the rod by Mahaprabhu was a useless waste of time, because there are 4 stages that sannyasis pass through. The first is known as kutichak, which means a new sannyasi is allowed to live on the outskirts of his town or village, and some of his family members can visit him every day and bring him his meals. After he gets used to that, he progresses to the next stage of sannyas, which is known as bahudak, which means he starts to beg, madhukari. He goes to a few householders' homes and begs just a very small amount from each home so that he doesn't become a burden on the householders. So he does that for some period of time, and it's during those first 2 stages of the sannyas order that a sannyasi is meant to carry his danda. But after that, what is known as parivrajakacharya and paramahamsa, no need to carry the sannyas staff anymore. A young Indian reporter paid Srila Prabhupada a wonderful compliment. He wrote about Srila Prabhupada after meeting him, and Prabhupada liked this quote very much. He referred to Srila Prabhupada as a parivrajakacharya, a jet-age parivrajakacharya. Because Prabhupada explained to him he was travelling once, twice, thrice all over the world using the latest technologies in jet-age transportation. So this young reporter liked that jet-age parivrajakacharya. And of course, Prabhupada enjoyed very much teasing some of his fellow countrymen back in India when he would tell them where he'd just been. All the great cities of the world, Prabhupada would list them, because he knew his fellow Indian countrymen would be somewhat transcendentally, shall we say, jealous, because they very much wanted to go to Paris and London and Los Angeles and New York and Melbourne. But Prabhupada was doing all that cent per cent in the service of Krishna. And of course we know Krishna made such wonderful arrangements that wherever, did I mention London? Wherever Prabhupada went in many of these big cities of the world, Prabhupada had the nicest quarters to stay in. When he was first shown into his renovated rooms at the recently acquired Dank Street Temple, 197 Dank Street, Albert Park, in Melbourne, by Madhavisa Swami, who opened the door and Prabhupada walked in, Prabhupada with great humility said, "All this is for me," because those quarters are so palatial and delightful. But we see what wonderful arrangements Krishna made for his representative, Srila Prabhupada. So Paramahamsa especially. So Nityananda Prabhu, he thought, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is God, he's Krishna. What to speak of Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajakacharya and Paramahamsa. He's the Supreme Lord. He doesn't need to carry this danda. But Mahaprabhu manifested slight anger towards Nityananda Prabhu and the other associates. Jagadananda Pandit was there, and it's even said Swarup Damodar Prabhu was there, and one or two others who were travelling with the Lord. So he said, "You can all do whatever you want to do. Thank you for bringing me this far, but I'm going ahead now to see Lord Jagannath on my own. You can go ahead, you can go behind, up to you." So sulky mood, it's described. He went ahead. And of course, the wonderful pastime is there of him fainting in ecstasy before Lord Jagannath. By transcendental arrangement, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was there. The guards at first were very disturbed, but Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he took charge of the situation. He was the Raj Pandit. He was the chief priest of the king of Puri. He had his own men, so he took Mahaprabhu, who was completely unconscious, in spiritual ecstasy, showing the highest spiritual ecstasy, which, because he was such a scholar, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had only read about this, but he'd never seen this particular state of extreme spiritual unconsciousness before. But he took the Lord to his own home, and of course there are just endless pastimes which resulted from that, unlimited transcendental pastimes. And of course it was when, after 7 days of hearing Vedanta philosophy from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that Mahaprabhu revealed to him this wonderful form. Again, Krishna playing the flute in two hands, Lord Ramachandra carrying his bow and arrow, and Mahaprabhu as a mendicant sannyasi with kamandalu, water pot, and danda in one hand. And so the time flies when we're talking about Mahaprabhu. There is lots more, but we better leave a little bit of time for comments or questions, please. Krishna, Krishna. Do we have? All right, just in case. Otherwise, we can end it there. If anyone doesn't have a question, so nice to see all the devotees and a few guests here as well, as always. And Krishna Surya Sam Maya Hoya Andakara Yahan Krishna Nahandai Maya Hoya Adhikari. Krishna is just like the sun. Hare Krishna. Okay, batteries are gone, so...
Got a question. Does the Acharya Prabhu, the Acharya saying that the Mahaprabhu's pastime, the reason for it is we also know Mahaprabhu cover his ears if someone called him Vishnu, you know?
Yeah.
In other words, he didn't want to at least identify the Supreme Personality of Christ. In this instance, before he manifested all these opulences, did they comment why that happened?
I have not read of late. Perhaps there is a comment. Anyone, did you, if you didn't hear that, I'll repeat the question. Krishna Kirtan's Prabhu is inquiring, what do our acharyas say? Mahaprabhu would sometimes cover his ears when one of his devotees addressed him as Vishnu. Don't say that. But yet in the Mahaprakash Lila, the Lord did manifest as the Supreme Lord to all his confidential associates. So I can't think, Nrsimha Kabachi, can you think of a comment or any of our learned devotees? Again, we can put that down to controversial. But Mahaprabhu did. Yes, Krishna Rupa. We might have batteries.
Just like his pastime with Murari Gupta, he climbed the shoulders of Murari Gupta, pretending that in his Varaha mood, and he had I think a little pot with him, and it was just that pastime. So I hadn't read anything specifically why he manifested that, but no doubt it was to give pleasure to his confidential associates.
Yes.
Like he did with Murari.
Yeah, good point. Yes. All right. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So you mentioned at the start of the class how this could be interpreted as in a controversial way. So I was thinking that the same way God seems a bit extreme, like everyone who doesn't worship Lord Chaitanya is to be considered Asura. But in the purport, Prabhupada, I think maybe it's in his quoting Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that Asura means one who is against the devotional service of the Lord, and to me I seemed, maybe that makes it a little less extreme, that he's speaking here of those who are maybe in body, mind and words some way or other militating against devotional service. Is that the correct understanding? In that sense, like maybe there's like just the ignorant people who are ignorant of Lord Chaitanya, and they're not so asuric like that. Would that be a correct interpretation?
I think so. Yes, they're innocent. You know, the vast population are innocent and just ignorant. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a couple of sections of the purport here, and the last part of the purport, again, Prabhupada is quoting Srila Bhakti-siddhanta Saraswati, remarks in this connection that atheist, I mean that's an atheist, though they may be smartas, Brahmins, but they're atheists. And they worship the 5 kinds of demigods. They worship Lord Vishnu for a little satisfaction in material success, but have no respect for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So there are even very strong quotes that demons take birth in Kali Yuga in Brahmin bodies, in Brahmin families. So, and of course we have the event where the Yagnik Brahmanas were performing sacrifices in Vrindavan, and some of the cowherd boys went to them and asked them for some. Krishna and Balaram were hungry. Please, can you supply us some foodstuffs? They were just boys, innocent boys. And the Yagnik Brahmanas became upset and angry and agitated and sent the boys away. But their wives understood that they had more realization of who Krishna and Balaram were. So they did provide the boys with foodstuffs. Ironically, the Yagnik Brahmanas are performing sacrifices, but in name only, so to speak, without any realization. So, yeah, good point. I think microphone might be on now.
Just following on from Krishna Kirtan's question, there is also, like for instance, when Lord Chaitanya revealed himself to Kalvecha Sridhar, and in the Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada is pointing out how he did that to show the greatness of Kalvecha. So sometimes you see, like when he performed, I think it was the Mahaprakash, where he was called Haridas, called this one, called that, and he was talking about things that had happened to them. How Haridas was beaten in different marketplaces. He said, I took those beatings and things like that. So part of it is to show the greatness of his devotees. And you see, he generally wouldn't reveal himself when there was, as you mentioned, when there was lesser devotees around, or when there was his confidential associates, he would reveal himself, just to show them who he is.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, very good. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Jai Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.